In recent years, the Resident Evil series has been pretty big on the idea of having a stalker character. You know, a monster patrols a certain area of the game that you gotta avoid because you can't kill him no matter how much damage you do. Resident Evil 7 had Jack Baker, the Resident Evil 2 remake had Mr. X, Resident Evil 3 had Nemesis, and now Resident Evil Village has Lady Dimitrescu. Now I've gotta say that after beating Resident Evil Village 5 times in honor of Booker T, I definitely think she's a better stalker than Nemesis and Jack Baker were. However, as great and memorable as she may be, I still think Mr. X is the greatest, scariest, and most fun stalker of them all. So sit back in David Beckham's signature lawn chair and allow me, YouTube's shortest full-grown man, Cameron all one word, to tell you why Mr. X rules and Lady Dimitrescu drools. Pretty sure I'm pronouncing her name right, but I'm gonna call her Lady D from now on. Or, you know, I could call her Double D. Sorry. Alright, I'm sure I'm gonna get duped on for questioning Lady D, because the game is still fresh in people's minds at the time of this recording, but I've gotta stand firm and say that I think Mr. X is not only scarier, but he also adds a lot more to his respective game. Don't get me wrong, though, I wouldn't argue that Lady D isn't more memorable, though. I mean, after all, how could she not be with those two big, beautiful yellow eyes? I just kinda think she's a little more annoying than scary. I mean, gameplay-wise, she was introduced really well. She cuts her hand off and plays a cat-and-mouse game with you in a narrow hallway while you wait for a gate to slowly open up. Pretty damn good stuff if I do say so myself, and it definitely establishes her as a threat right off the bat. Mr. X, on the other hand, may not cut your hand off, but I still think him popping up completely out of nowhere and lifting a helicopter before pursuing you around the police station's pretty good too. Especially in Claire's storyline, where there's no hint of the guy beforehand whatsoever. He just kinda shows up right when you thought you'd gotten the hang of things. You do have to deal with him and asshair more on Leon's campaign, but most of the time he's not really stalkerish. He just automatically pursues you like a magnet, so for the sake of this video, I'm mainly going to be talking about the police station stalking. As far as Jack Baker from Resident Evil 7's concerned, though, I thought he was an excellent boss fight and an incredibly memorable character, but as far as the stalking goes, I only barely remembered he stalked you at all, and I beat the game twice, so meh. To me, he's the worst stalker out of the four. But then we've got Nemesis, who's literally in Resident Evil 3 from the very beginning of the game and sticks around till the very end. And you would think that makes him the ultimate stalker, although seeing as how most of his encounters are really just boss fights where you're supposed to beat him, I'm only gonna focus on the parts where you're trying to get the subway running, because that's really the only portion of the game where he's actively searching for you in the same way Mr. X and Lady D do. But even then, I only barely consider this to be the same kind of stalking, cause as soon as you're outside, he just automatically knows where you are and charges at you fast as frig, rather than wandering around till he spots you. And seeing as how he's way faster than you, I honestly consider this more of a boss fight than anything else. I mean, you can outrun him if you constantly dodge every 3 seconds, but outside of speedrunning, it's really just best to temporarily put him down with a grenade and get where you need to go. Don't get me wrong, it's still pretty friggin' scary when he charges at you, but I think the fact that you can outrun Mr. X and Lady D actually makes him way scarier, especially when you usually don't know where they are exactly. With Nemesis, you know damn well that as soon as you go outside, he's gonna jump down from a building and there's no way you can get away from him, so you might as well just fight him. With Mr. X and Lady D, though, you're always on edge trying to move in between safe rooms, never knowing quite when they're gonna pop up. But the thing is, Mr. X's footsteps are way louder, so even when you are in a safe room, you never quite feel at ease. Lady Dimitrescu, on the other hand, though, well, she's got petite feet. A feminine step. She sounds like a lady when she's walking in the room.
Now this is what a man sounds like when he walks. And this is what that dude sounded like when he walked.
And not only does Mr. X have much scarier footsteps, but he's also got a terrifying theme song that plays whenever he spots you, unlike the vampire lady who kinda just shouts at you and that's it. Mr. X being more robotic and emotionless kinda makes him scarier in some ways, but then again, he doesn't have torture on his mind, whereas Lady D wants to avenge her daughters with those Wolverine claws, so if this were real life, then I'm gonna say I'd rather get caught by Mr. X. Lady D does turn into this giant dragon thingy, so she's definitely more dangerous than Mr. X, but again, we're talking about the pursuit sections here. But even if we're talking about the base forms, Mr. X still sells being shot and could even be put down for 30 seconds if you do enough damage to him. No matter how much you shoot Lady D, though, she barely ever sells being shot, and there's no way you can put her down even for a few seconds.
Ethan Winters
knows he can't beat me, and he's not even gonna try.
I know this makes the game harder, so if difficulty's what you're going by, then Lady D's definitely the winner here, but with that logic, God of War and Battletoads are some of the scariest games ever. Personally, I think it's better to have the option to put the Stalker down for a little bit, cause after my second playthrough of Village, it was pretty friggin' annoying waiting for Lady D to get out of my path. Wouldn't be a problem if the castle were more connected, but there's just way too many ways where she could trap you, and like, I know there's usually a spot where you could lure her to get around, but I don't know, I just think the police station's way better suited for a stalker because everything's connected way better. Not only that, but if you really want to talk about difficulty, then it's certainly worth considering all the other enemies you gotta deal with while avoiding the stalkers. Village has a few geeks in the courtyard, and Lady D's kids do pop up sometimes before you kill them all if you play with your dinghy for too long in the castle, but the police station's got zombies that are a little more threatening than the geeks, and the lickers really put you in a pickle if Mr. X is on your ass. I mean, your only two choices are to either run and alert the lickers, or let Mr. X catch up to you. It's a terrifying decision most people have to make on the first playthrough, and one that I love to hate myself. All in all, though, I guess it just comes down to personal preference as to which stalker you prefer. I feel like most people would say Lady D because she's more recent, and if I'm being completely honest, it is possible that I find Mr. X scarier because he horrified me as a kid. I mean, I even dressed up as him for Halloween one year, and I've been kicking myself in the dick ever since for not taking a picture of the costume I made. But honestly, I really don't think that nostalgia is the reason why I think he's a better stalker than Lady D. Either way, I really do want to know who you think the better stalker is, so let me know in the comments so we can have a civil discussion or a heated debate. I don't really care. Either way, it'll be fun. Just keep in mind that I'm purely talking about the stalking aspect, though, not the character designs and the boss fights where you could actually kill him or anything like that. And anyway, that's all for today, though, so if you're new here, then you should check out my full-length movie I made with Steven Seagal called Under Siege 2. If you'll excuse me, though, I gotta go fire my dad, because he's not been doing a very good job lately at all. Later!
So I want to say thank you to your loyalty. Thank you for your support.